listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffauf.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour. I am one of your hosts, Joe Mays, and here with me, as always, is my co-host, Justin Raffauf.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's kind of hard to believe we're, essentially a third of the way through the regular season.
I know, it feels like it takes forever to get here, but then when it finally does, it goes so quickly. It moves by at a lightning pace, and we're finished with 3 games already. 3 of the guaranteed 10 regular season games that the Wilson Bulldogs will play this year have passed us by. Your Bulldogs now sit at 2 wins and 1 loss after a setback Friday night up in Nazareth against the Blue Eagles, and we will recap that one in its entirety here this evening. But it was a highly scoring, close-knit affair that just didn't end up going Wilson's way.
Right, exactly. It was a game that it could have gone either way, and we'll get more into the details. But obviously it's not the result that we wanted, but there were some encouraging signs as well that we saw during the game. It left me, again, not to jump ahead, but yeah, there's plenty of positives and things to build off of coming out of that game, which is good. Sometimes you suffer a tough loss, and sometimes it can feel like you're back at square one. And some of that may have to do with the way the loss went, or like when the loss was, or who the loss was to, or something. This didn't have that feel to me. This is disappointing because you feel like we had a shot at that one, but at the same time, there's a lot of football games left, and I don't know, maybe now more than I have so far this season. I don't want to say now I'm optimistic because that makes it sound like I wasn't before. But
right?
Maybe I've reassured myself, or I have a stronger conviction that I expect this team to do great things over the next couple months.
Yeah, even with the loss, I think the bar has been raised even higher just because of the quality of the opponent that was faced, the close nature of the game, literally less than a minute away from possibly winning the game.
The only way you can get experience in those big moments, too, is to experience those big moments. And guess what? Now we have.
Yeah, right. And that's exactly why Coach Doug Doms and the coaching staff want to play big-time 5A, 6A opponents. They want to test themselves. They've always tested themselves. Yeah. That's why Central Dauphin was a mainstay for 10 years. I mean, think back to when they came on the schedule that year. The 3 non-league games that were played at the beginning of the season were their 3 opponents in the postseason then. Yeah. So they got to see Central Dauphin twice that year. They got to see CD East twice that year. They got to see Carlisle twice Carlisle was the lone one that that they hadn't played twice, but they played multiple teams multiple times because they got to see them in the playoffs again. Obviously, we won't get to see Nazareth in the district playoffs.
Hey, I'd love to play them again.
Right, yeah. If we're playing Nazareth again, things went really well this year.
For both teams.
Right, because that would either be...
I think it would be
honestly,
state final.
I think that would be state final. Right. So, I obviously, I don't want to get that far ahead of ourselves.
Mark it down.
Your overwhelming positivity... But before we dive into breaking down the Nazareth game in its entirety, I do want to take a moment and thank our presenting sponsors at the Bulldog Hour, and a new one for this season, but not new to the program. We want to welcome back Mike Drago and MikeDragoSports.com. Of course, as always, my dad, Bill Mays, and Mays Sandwich Shop. And for the last 2 seasons, White Star Tours. Appreciate all 3 of them for sticking with us and supporting us here at the Bulldog Hour. Very much appreciated. And they're not alone. We got a few others. We want to thank sponsors for the program in Season 10 here, the Miller family and our 2 anonymous donors joining Mays Sandwich Shop, White Star Tours, and MikeDragoSports.com. Mike Drago up at Nazareth to cover that game. Got my pictures to him for his write-up. We traveled with SV Sports. Paul was carpool with us up to that game. I know EasternPAFootball.com was there. Dave Micah, as well as WFMZ.
I think some Lehigh Valley.
And the Ready Eagle and a variety of Lehigh Valley. So you could tell it was a big game.
Yeah.
And people were out in full force. I think I saw Paul Roberts tweet that it was close to or right around 4,000 people.
It was packed
at the stadium to watch a thrilling game between the Wilson Bulldogs and Nazareth area Blue Eagles. Now, our next show will be 1 week from now at this time. Same place as always. Watch us across YouTube, Twitter X, or on Facebook. Sunday, September 15th, we'll recap Game 4, which is against Reading, and preview Game 5 against Cedar Crest, leading up to finally a second home game coming up in a couple weeks. Justin,
this is the one, right? This is the one where it's back-to-back. The rest of the time it alternates?
Right, yeah. So this is the only back-to-back road games we have at Nazareth, then at Reading High, and then we'll go home away throughout the rest of the season. So two away games down, a third on deck, only one home down. You can see the schedule thrown up there if you're watching us on YouTube right now. Coming up, Game 4 at Reading High, September 13th, Friday the 13th at Shirk Stadium on the Albright campus for a showdown with the Red Knights. Then come back home on Friday, September 20th for a game against the Cedar Crest Falcons. Before we move on, do want to remind everyone that next Saturday, but the 14th of September, right the day before we do this show, the day after the Reading High game, is the 80th season alumni game, flag football, featuring over 50 alumni coaches and players at Instashine Car Wash Field at Gursky Stadium. Kickoff is set for 6 p.m. next Saturday, the 14th. But however, the festivities will kind of get started a little bit earlier than that, around 5:30. We're welcoming in all the youth program kids to do the tunnel like they did for youth night at the football game the other week. We'd like to do that for the alumni. We've got the cheerleaders, current and some alumni. We are still working on organizing a larger alumni pep band. The athletic trainers will be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we invite everyone to come out and watch that game. Free admission, doesn't cost anything to get in. Just come out, have fun. There will be concessions and merchandise available. I believe the dance team is also setting up a table to sell some apparel and some food as well. So there will be opportunities to grab some dinner and support other Wilson community programs and athletic teams, and then watch your alumni. It was a lot of fun 5 years ago when we did this in 2019 for the 75th season, bringing it back again for the 80th season, and expecting to have another great turnout and a lot of fun. Weather's looking maybe warm, but nice, and that's the most important thing is let's keep the liquid rain from falling. We don't need any of that next Saturday, so keep hoping for good weather, because that is certainly what I hope for.
Yes, absolutely.
So I have the rosters there up on the screen. We debuted that a few weeks ago, and you can see that on our social media as well. So less than a week to go to the 80th season alumni flag football game. Hope to see everyone at Instashine Car Wash Field at Gursky Stadium on Saturday, September 14th. All right, Justin, let's get into it now. Bulldogs Game 3 on the road up at Nazareth against the Blue Eagles. Beautiful night, huge crowd, and an electric first half if you're into offensive football.
Yes.
In terms of scoring offense.
Yes.
Not terrible football, because I'm sure there are a lot of people entertained by what was happening in the first and second quarter. Neither defense could get much of a stop.
No. Two contrasting styles on how they were going about their achieving their scores. But, man, it was just... neither team could seem to get a stop. I feel like we were on the verge of a few stops.
Felt like it, yes.
And then they'd hit on a big play. Man, Falzone's got a heck of an arm. And
he does.
That sounds ridiculous. Hey, amazing, this D1 quarterback,
right.
Power 5 D1 quarterback has a good arm. Oh, you don't say. But his ability to make plays down the field after rolling out, or avoiding some pressure, and then going deep. They talk about that a lot when you're watching college or NFL football, how it's hard to defend the pass downfield for extended periods of time. And his quickness, I think I had seen before, his quickness, in like districts in the 100 as a sophomore last year.
Right.
Show you how, at least some, I know he's not running 100 meters here, but like they show you his quickness in some tangible form. And that does relate to the football field. And he was able to use those skills to buy himself some time and then use his cannon of an arm to throw it deep.
Yeah,
and they hit on a number of those.
His style is kind of the most dangerous, at least certainly at the high school level, because he has such a cannon of an arm. He was launching it 50-plus yards downfield from his back foot, not even like trying to throw the ball.
His throw, I'm not saying the throwing style, but just like some of the throws he makes remind me of like an infielder in baseball running like away from first base and catching it and then throwing across their body like all the way over to first base. Like he'd be on the run and just like chuck the ball 40, 50 yards. Yeah, it was impressive. Like I left. Yeah. You and I have seen a number of big names over the years, mostly at Wilson games, but other places. And sometimes you see it and you're like, wow. And sometimes you see it and be like, okay, like maybe I didn't see it tonight, but we understand that on any given night, there's a lot that goes into a football team. It's not just one player. I left Friday night thinking like, okay, I can see it.
He certainly elevates the team.
Oh,
like
oh my gosh.
Because
yes,
I don't, save for foul zone, there was one or two other guys that I thought were strong, stood out for them, but otherwise I felt it was very. I'm not trying to diss anyone. I'm just like, it was a standard high school football team. It felt like your regular high school football team.
Yeah.
That's not saying the other players aren't good. It's just there were two or three standouts with foul zone because he clearly rose above everyone. Literally, I mean, he's a towering presence, and his speed is so deceptive. You don't expect someone that tall with that powerful an arm to also be that quick. And in the end, it was his 50-yard touchdown run that was the deciding score of the game. It was the only point scored in the second half was his 50-plus yard touchdown run in the third quarter to put Nazareth up 35-31. They had been down 31-28 at halftime. Christo Hunsaker kicked a field goal as time expired to give Wilson
we got the first and only stop of the second of the first half.
The first half. Otherwise, they had traded 8 consecutive scoring drives to open the game, 4 for each team.
Right.
And then Wilson stopped Nazareth and got the ball back and drove down the field and got the field goal with no time left to have the 3-point edge at halftime. But it then was Nazareth and Falzone on his legs that ended up getting the deciding score in the third quarter. Who would have thought that after the way the first quarter went? I mean, they scored on their third or fourth play from scrimmage?
I think so.
And it was a huge deep throw down the right side, down the Nazareth sideline for a score. Wilson, methodical, drives down the field, gets their own touchdown. I believe missed the extra point on that one.
Yes.
Nazareth gets it back, and just it felt like third or fourth play on that series. Another big score for a touchdown. They go up 14-6. Wilson gets the ball back, drives down the field, scores again. 2-point conversion, good. So it's 14-14. Same thing happens for 4 more drives, 2 for each team, to get us to 28-28. Maddox Gruber scored Wilson's first touchdown on a nice almost like a boot out of dozer formation, out of the tight, goal line, short yardage type situation. He walked in untouched. He then also scored on 2 sneaks from underneath center to get across the goal line. We had Corell Akings get in the end zone, and we had the the field goal from Christo Hunsaker. So all in all, it was kind of a fast-paced, plotting first half because it took forever with all the points being scored to get the first half finished. And then the second half, we saw a lot of adjustments defensively. The offenses weren't able to score as quickly. We saw Nazareth go into almost like a short passing and screen passing game, as Wilson had really worked hard to take away the big passes and did really well in the second half, taking those away.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of the increase in pressure, it was allowing these slits in the defense that Falzone was able to take advantage of and get the deciding score well into the third quarter. Was that their first series of the third quarter? Because Wilson got the ball and drove down the field and missed a field goal with the opening possession of the second half. I believe Nazareth then scored on the next possession. They drove down the field, got to midfield, and then Falzone finished it with his legs. But that would be the end of the scoring. It wouldn't be the end of chances. It wouldn't be the end of the excitement or the drama.
Right.
But it was 35-31 when all was said and done. Wilson got an very close but decisive fourth down stop where Falzone did end up using his legs, but E.J. Brownback was able to, and the Wilson defense was able to stop him just short of what they needed to get the first down. It was very, very close, actually, and I have photos of that. Let me see if I can pull them up. Justin, could you tell from your vantage point?
No, from my vantage point, I thought they made it. Let me rephrase that. I thought it was very close, and I thought, from my perspective, which is at a decently sharp angle to the line, it's not a great view. From where I am, I mean, it's a great view of the field. It's not a great view of whether or not it's going to be short or he has it. I thought he had it. I believe the coaches up in the booth thought he was going to have it because they were prepping what defensive call we were going to make coming out of the measurement. And then for us, to see our guys pointing. And honestly, again, from the angle we were looking at, and it's a decent distance from that point too, even when they put the chain down and we see some of the guys in your picture, I can see Cam pointing, I can see Christo pointing. I wasn't convinced they weren't going
Chase
to
and Brady too.
I wasn't convinced they weren't going to point the other direction, a la the South Carolina-Michigan bowl game years ago with Jadeveon Clowney when he then decks him on the next play. I thought it was going to be one of those, but hey, we stopped them. We got the ball back, so.
I don't know if I can zoom in on this. I just really liked it because you have Christo showing short and Cam and Brady and Chase and everyone on the field pointing. It was really close. It was super close when they finally set the chains and had it vertical. It couldn't have been more than maybe 2 inches.
Wow.
Maybe. It might have been less too. I mean, you can tell in that picture how close it is. I'd say probably about 2 inches. That would be my guess, right around there. So obviously that spot goes literally 3 inches either the other way, and they get a first down. The game's probably over there.
Yeah.
That's the end of the game at that moment. But it didn't happen. Wilson got the ball back, drove down the field, and got to the 1 yard line on just a stellar drive, just a great drive. It took about 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes or so. I think they got it back around the 5-minute mark when they stopped Nazareth there. I keep wanting to say Cedar Crest for some reason. The blue and the
Eagles.
Falcons, but the birds. The blue and the birds. It just keeps messing me up. So that was. It was a fantastic drive from the offense. Once again, they had stalled a little bit in the second half, didn't get any points, had the missed field goal, kind of went back and forth. Were kind of playing between the 20s, not able to get points on any of their drives. But they had a great drive to put them in position to win the game. We saw Maddox doing a lot. We saw Monty Greer doing a lot. We saw Corral ran hard all night long.
He had a great game.
An incredible game. Another big game, and one of my favorites was this one on, I believe it was 3rd and long. Third and 13, maybe even 3rd and longer. I think there might have been a holding penalty or they had taken a loss. And right on the Wilson sideline, Maddox put up a perfect ball to where only Corral could get it, and he made a great catch right at the sideline to pick up a first down to keep that drive alive. And then in the next few plays, Wilson was all of a sudden inside the 5 on a play from Maddox Gruber to tight end Michael Glover, who had a huge game at tight end.
I can tell you, being on top of their stands, this happens every week. They'll pick something, but I'm trying to think of what week it was. Oh, it was the Cheltenham game. At the Cheltenham game, they were yelling for watch number 4. They were yelling Cam's number the whole
because
time.
they kept going to Cam.
This time, they're like, watch 15, watch 15. Like, they're all just screaming it the whole time.
So a player or two later, Wilson's at the 1, just short of the goal line, and unfortunately on this play, there was a fumble and it got bounced and kicked around. It ended up, I believe, in the end zone.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
and was recovered by Nazareth.
yeah.
Which was obviously incredibly disappointing and very deflating. But the Bulldogs were not out of it. The defense was able to
They had 2 timeouts left.
rise to the challenge, had the timeouts, had been good clock management. So to that point, things were still working in Wilson's direction, still had time to get a score. And honestly, Nazareth kind of helped Wilson out a bit, allowing us to save a timeout, because on third down, they called us.
I think it was only 3rd and like 2.
It wasn't.
It was not long.
It wasn't a long. I think it was a little longer than that. I think it was like 3rd and 4 or something like that. 3rd and mid for them to get, and they came out in a
difficult from the angle I'm at.
a swinging gate formation.
Yeah, and what I was impressed with was Wilson just stayed firm. Like, they were prepared for that. They were very prepared. Sometimes kids will panic and they'll start like running around and chase that formation. Nope, they were good to go.
Right. So Wilson forces a punt and is set up to maybe make the game-winning score with no time. Unfortunately, it didn't end up going that direction. There just wasn't enough time. They drove down the field, got closer, just didn't get close enough. I know there were some issues on the punt return on this that Carell had signaled for a fair catch, but apparently it wasn't up high enough that the refs missed it and allowed play to continue. But you can see that
there's also confusion too, because he like bobbled it. So like, if he calls the fair catch, and this is me, I did not hear this, but like, it looked like he bobbled it a little bit. So they had a guy flying down, but he can't hit him because he's like, if you call a fair catch, it has to hit the ground if you would be able, in order to be able to hit him. And the guy doesn't, and then he runs. I don't know. I didn't know if he called it or not, but they certainly were saying he did. But
so Wilson had one last play. They were, I don't know, were they around 35 or so? I want to say Nazareth 35, something like that.
Looks like it there.
And it just had
maybe like the 40.
Just had to heave it into the end zone. Hope for a miracle catch, sort of like Maddox to Glover at halftime of the Cheltenham game. And it just didn't work out. There you can see the ball was just out of the reach of Michael Glover. I think some, including Maddox and Mike, wanted pass interference, but it's going to take a lot for them. Right or wrong, it's going to take a lot for them to call it on a Hail Mary play and give you an untimed down at the. Well, I guess it wouldn't be at the goal line.
Right,
it would be 15. So
yards,
it'd be it would have been from around the 20 or whatever. But it wasn't egregious enough to throw the flag.
Right.
So that didn't end up going in Wilson's direction, and the Bulldogs end up losing 35-31 to District 11 Power Nazareth, who's really come on in the last 5 years or so. Coach Falzone and his son. It was an exciting game. I think everyone got their money's worth. So
it was a fantastic game. It's disappointing because it wasn't the outcome I want. But like, again, we've touched on a number of these things already. You schedule these games. Well, one, I feel like Nazareth is probably in a similar boat to Wilson. In terms of they'll schedule like a big school that's willing to play them. They'll schedule it. Because I would imagine, having won a couple district championships and stuff, they don't have an easy time finding opponents either.
Right.
So you have that. Hey, like these tests, hopefully help your team get better. They help you, like, again, there's 100 different variables, but you know what? I feel like our team hopefully has the opportunity to learn and get a lot better. There may be a lot more improvement that comes from a game like this than playing like an MLK or something like that.
Right.
You know, like there can be advantages to those games too. I don't want to make it sound like those games aren't worth anything. They certainly are. But I feel like the learning opportunity is greater with this Nazareth game than it was with some other, some of our other week 3 ones that we've had over the last few years. So, hey, it's you want to win. But again, I think that many people, especially outside of the Wilson program, if you had told them that this is how the game was going to go down, they would have been very surprised. Right. I think a lot of people thought Nazareth was going to kind of manhandle Wilson, that we would have no answer for foul zone. And early on, we didn't, but the adjustments were great, that we weren't going to be able to score, to keep up with them, and we could. There were plenty of things to build off of moving forward too, and that's kind of where my optimism comes from. Yeah, losing's not fun. Nobody likes that. But I think I sent you this way back when we were doing following the Penn State wrestling stuff this winter, and it was one of the coaches from one of the big programs. It might actually be the Bethlehem Catholic coach who was interviewed, and he said something just like if I get a kid that goes undefeated all 4 years of high school, I apologize to the kid because I clearly didn't do a good enough job of getting him into a competition that's really going to push him to get better. And he's like, look, the goal is to go undefeated. He's like, that's not what I'm saying. He's like,
got to face some adversity.
Right. But he's like, if I haven't put you up against anybody who's better than you, then what have I helped you grow as much as I can? I kind of like that attitude applied here. If, this is a chance that we played someone good. Hey, we take the loss. Now we have to get better. We have to get better, and our next opportunity is Reading, and you need to come out and play to the standard that we have.
It needs to be the best game you've played so far this year.
Right.
Not because Reading has better than Nazareth, but because you want to see yourself get better each week.
Right. I said it's a learning opportunity, but you can only. The players are the only ones that can really control that. They have to dictate how that's going to go. And it can be tough after a heartbreaking loss like this because I know they think they should have won that game. And, I wouldn't argue against that, but, hey, it's over with. It's done with. You can't let one disappointment become multiple disappointments. Right. Regroup, get better, and you have a lot left to play for, and all of your goals are still
right.
All of your goals.
You don't want to talk about moral victories, but early in the season, those can be okay sometime. And I think this is one where you have to take away the positives of the experience, going on the road, playing a team ranked in the top 5 in the largest classification in this state, looking good throughout, or being able to correct issues that you had. Was it perfect? Clearly not. There are things that have to be cleaned up, and that's what this week of practice is for. That's what the next few weeks are for, because let's face it, Wilson probably would be, if it was a thing, favored to win every game up until week 10 when they go to Manheim Township. That's just, people might say that before the season, but now I think at this point in the season, you're probably thinking that Wilson on paper and should be on the field better than their next 6 opponents.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a stretch to say that.
Yeah.
But now they have to execute. They can't become resigned to the fact that they are better and rest on their laurels and come out and think that other teams are just going to give up. Because that's never the case when it comes to the big boy programs in the section of the district. You have to show up each week and get better and prove that you are still one of the best programs in the league, in the section, in the league, in the district. It was a contrast to last week, Justin, where we were talking about kind of an old school football game against Plymouth Whitemarsh to win that one 21-7. Wasn't a lot of offense. There was a lot of ball control, possession time. This week was kind of crazy. So let's run through some of the team statistics here. First downs, Wilson actually, because of their methodical scoring drives, did a lot better in the first down category than Nazareth. Wilson had 27 first downs to Nazareth 16. Wilson rushed the ball 53 times for 187 yards. Nazareth rushed 24 times for 143 yards. Of course, they got one big play from Falzone for 50 right there, which was over a third of their rushing yardage on one play. Passing yards, believe this, Justin, I know you pointed it out to me at the end of the game Friday night. Nazareth went for 254 yards on 13 completions. Maddox Gruber threw for 247 yards on 16 completions. Total offense, Wilson outgained Nazareth 434 yards to 397. Now, they did also have 31 more plays, but that's because of the game plan and the execution of the Wilson offense was more ball control, nice running game, and then supplement that with some really good passing as well. There were no fumbles. Wilson did excellent on kickoff returns, 6 for 186 yards. A few times I thought Monty or Carell was going to break it, and we were going to see a return touchdown.
Yeah, we doubled them up in terms of return yards.
We did, exactly. Right on the number, 186 to 93. Wilson obviously lost the one fumble. That was the only turnover in the game. Happened in the final minute of the game.
Which is crazy when you have an offensive kind of shootout that there weren't more mistakes,
Possession time, Wilson dominated, nearly doubling up Nazareth, 31 minutes, 30 seconds to 16 minutes, 30 seconds. Because of the offenses in the first half, both teams were pretty successful on third down. Wilson, 9 of 15, 2 of 3 on fourth. Wilson scored 5 out of their 7 chances in the red zone. It's just those 2 without points decide the game.
A 4-point game.
Decide the game. Wilson had 1 sack. Nazareth had 2. Pretty well done by both offensive lines. But one thing I know the listeners want us to talk about it, so we'll point it out. It's fine. We don't have to dive into it too much because we don't like to focus on excuses. Penalties, Wilson had more than double the number of penalties that Nazareth had. Nazareth was called for 5 accepted penalties at 38 yards. Wilson was called for 12 at 94 yards. And Justin, you and I talked about it. If you're looking at the first 3 games, I would say that this was the worst performance by an officiating group in the first 3 games.
Yeah, when I look back, I don't even recall the officiating crew from the Plymouth Whitemarsh game. I don't. There's nothing that even really sticks out.
The Cheltenham one, things went really well until there was that weird stuff on the back-to-back Zulinger catches that were then negated, and they're talking about alignments and things like that.
This one, it was tough. Again, it's hard because I'd like to see. I mean, I guess we could probably do it, but I'd like to see a breakdown of if you take away some of the pre-snap ones, because those are non-negotiables most of the time. You know what I mean? And I know we jumped off sides on 3rd and short one time or 4th and short one time. Well, that's not on the refs. That's on us. I know we had some false starts. Well, that's on us.
Sure. Yeah. So pre-snap, post-snap.
I think it would be a little more even. It's still not even. It's not. But I think it would be a little closer if those were taken out. But I could be wrong because I could be not remembering some of theirs that are pre-snap too. I don't know. I don't remember.
I think the thing that jumps out to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we already discussed this. I don't believe they were called for a single hold all night.
I don't think they were.
Which kind of seems crazy to me.
It's hard when a quarterback runs from the pocket, outside of the pocket, that there's not a hold.
That there's not someone holding. Right. So that seems a little odd.
The only
to
holding
me.
they were called for was pass interference. Should have been pass interference.
They were called for holding. But then the other one is more of a no call that I think a lot of Wilson fans are upset about.
Yeah. So, go ahead. Well, I was make sure we're talking about the same one.
I was going to pull up the video because I know Paul Roberts from SV Sports caught it because he showed it to me because I didn't realize it had even happened.
Okay.
But it was on, I believe.
So I couldn't, from my angle, I couldn't see it. I saw, we talked about it, but I couldn't see that from my angle. And thinking about the layout and where Paul was taking that video from, it was directly opposite from me, opposite angle. So I could not see that. It
was in the first half. I believe it was the no, it couldn't have been. It must have been the 3rd touchdown because it was going the other way. It was going away from the scoreboard, and Nazareth first went towards the scoreboard. So it must have been the 3rd touchdown Nazareth scored, 3rd or 4th. And I was frantic, taking pictures, trying to download them, trying to edit them and post them to keep people updated. I was barely getting any chance to photograph Wilson's defensive attempts because the scoring was happening so quickly. So I wasn't working my way down to the Wilson defense against the Nazareth offense when there was another long pass that resulted in a touchdown. And I would have showed the video, but it doesn't look like Paul posted it yet. But he came and showed me after the fact. And it's a textbook. He did post it?
I'm pretty sure he did because I thought I saw it.
Maybe it was on Twitter then. I pulled up on Instagram.
Yeah,
but
I think it was on Twitter.
It's textbook offensive pass interference. And you know why? Because the same thing happened yesterday in the Penn State game, and they got flagged for it.
I was thinking it, yes.
It's a two-arm push-off of the defender, and Maddox Gruber was in possession that he may have even been able to pick off the pass.
Right.
But instead it resulted in a catch and a touchdown, and there were no flags. And it's really bad. It's a great piece of video from SB Sports and Paul Roberts. And it's unfortunate that wasn't called. Did it have an impact on the game? Sure it did. Would it have changed the outcome? I have no idea because things would have been wildly different had any number of things happened there. But it's those things that get people upset. And I understand it. Like fans we're going to be fans. We're going to be upset when things like that are missed. But in the end, Wilson had plenty of opportunities to win that game.
Right.
And unfortunately it didn't go our way.
All the penalties and everything aside, we had our shot and we didn't convert.
Right, but and like you said, back to the positive because there's an immense amount of positivity coming from this game. We heard it from Coach Dom's post game talking to his players. Are you going to be disappointed? Yes, but you move on and improve and take this as a learning experience and prop yourself up because you went to battle.
Yeah, well, and look at this. Like this is part of me being optimistic too. Is I don't leave that game thinking, oh, we played a perfect game and couldn't beat them.
Right.
No. We played far from a perfect game.
Right.
I'd give us a B. Like, honestly, I think we played a B game.
You're right. No, I think you're right.
Like, we had moments of A. Like,
I think...
But I think we played a B game, and
I think...
still should have won.
I think, honestly, defensive execution in the first half was, a C?
Yeah.
Like, the first half, defensively,
again,
on the field?
There were lots of little things that, like... Well, this kind of throughout the game. There were lots of little things. And sometimes those little things don't matter. But when you play a team like Nazareth,
it matters.
It matters.
I mean, first half offense, you probably have to give them at least an A-,
yeah.
Even an A. I mean, they couldn't really do anything wrong.
5 times
and scored all
5.
5. And one of them was a field goal, not a touchdown. I'll ding you for that.
But
it's an A, not an A+.
But they would have had first down at it was time.
Right. You ran out of time. So I mean, almost a flawless performance from the offense in the first half. By Wilson standards, a below average performance defensively in the first half. Second half, things changed around. Defense wasn't perfect, gave up that big touchdown run, but that was it.
Right.
They had adapted, they changed, they worked different players in, they changed their scheme, they started to apply pressure, and they went from a C to a B+.
Yeah.
Couldn't get into that A category, and it ended up costing them. But the offense then couldn't break through in the second half.
Right, had some chances, but then we got some penalties and got behind the ball.
And made mistakes.
Just
leaving points on the field, missing a field goal, fumbling at the goal line. So not a flawless performance, but one with a lot of positive takeaways.
It adds to because I'm like, man, there's a lot of room for improvement.
Right.
How good could we be if we play an A game?
Right.
Like, what's our A game look like?
If there are not mental pre-snap mistakes with false starts or jumping off sides.
Right.
If there aren't holding penalties, if you're not holding the guy, while you're blocking, if you are able to pull down an interception, if you're going to make that field goal, if you're going to be able to hold on to the ball, whether it's a catch or a fumble, like you play a perfect game, Wilson can beat a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of football left to be played.
Right.
So, all that's left to hear, Justin, I think we go over some individual statistics and then do a little quick preview of the upcoming Reading game. So we touched on the team statistics. Let's talk a little individual performances now. And start first with, we mentioned him already, Corell Akings, the junior running back. 29 carries for Corell. 131 rushing yards and a touchdown. Maddox also carried the ball 22 times. He ended up netting 42 yards because of a few sacks, but he scored 3 touchdowns, all short yardage, under probably 3 yards to go. Some of them might have been 6 inches to go, but got in the end zone 3 times. Monty carried the ball 2 times for 14 yards. Maddox was 15 of 24 for 233 passing yards because I forgot Christo Hunsaker on fake punt was 1 for 1 for 14. Beautiful setup on that fake punt. Great execution by the players for that conversion there. The main receiver for Maddox Gruber was tight end Mike Glover. The sophomore had 8 catches for 132 yards. Carell and Cam Zulinger had 3 catches apiece, and then Monty Greer and Eli Dean also had a reception to total 16 total for receptions during the game. Christo was 1 for 2 on field goals, hitting the 32-yarder just before halftime, but halfway through the third, he did miss a 33-yarder, but it was nice to see him nail that one right before halftime.
Yeah, that was awesome.
All right, defensively speaking, this week, a little bit different than last week. Very evenly spread out were the tackles. Christo Hunsaker led the way with 6 total, 1 for loss on a sack. E.J. Brownback had 5.5 total. Then Monty Greer and Aiden Kramer had 4. Brady Klein with 3.5, 1 of them for loss. And Mike Glover and Mel Gaston each had 3. So, Justin, I think by and large, there's probably 3 offensive players that stand out as a possibility for our player of the week this week.
Yeah.
It's probably the toughest choice we've had so far this year. I feel like there was someone that stood out. I mean, I guess week 1 could have gone a few ways. I feel like last week EJ was definitely the runaway guy to get it. And defensive guys don't get it all that often, or at least it takes some kind of defensive score or big turnover. EJ led the way just being so consistent and dominant in the tackles in game 2 against PW. Week 1 could have gone a variety of ways. We went with Monty Greer, though, for his game. Here we are, game 3 at Nazareth. I think offensively you have to lean that direction. It was a tough decision. It really was. But I think him being a two-way player, standing out, especially helping to shut down the passing game in the second half, helps what he did offensively. So for game 3, we are going to go with senior quarterback, defensive back Maddox Gruber. Again, this easily could have gone to Carell Akings or Michael Glover. Honestly, and if Mike catches one of the touchdowns Wilson scored, if one of those goes to Glover, I think that might tip it in his direction.
Right.
So he was just so dependable throughout the game. And a workman, like 29 carries for Carell.
Like if he's able to come down with another one of those catches in the end zone, like at the end.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But it's no telling where the Wilson offense would have been without any of those 3 guys. They really put in the work. And obviously when you rush that many times for that much yardage, you got to give props to the offensive line as well. Right. You know, we saw Jesse Etchberger get one of the Tobias Frog coaches MVPs last week, and the offensive line was stellar again, clearing out space for Maddox, Carell, Monty in the running game, and then Glover in the passing game for sure. So this week we are going to go with senior quarterback, defensive back Maddox Gruber. But it's great to have multiple options, to have so many guys in the discussion, as it just shows that it was a total team effort. So congratulations to Maddox and the team for playing one heck of a game.
Yeah.
And excited to see how the next 7 games go, as we're about a third of the way through the season now. All right, Justin. So our last thing here is a preview of game 4, and that is another road game. It is in Reading at Albright Shirk Stadium. Wilson was there 2 years ago. That was kind of a Cam Jones game. Had a couple of returning touchdowns, a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, it was a pretty even first quarter when we were there 2 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. It was. It took a little bit of time for Wilson to get their feet under them and start to pull away.
It might have been like. Might it have still been 0-0 like near the end of the first quarter? And
it may have been 0-0
I
at
think
the
it
end.
was 0-0 after 1, and then we might have had that mercy ruled at the end of the first half.
Yeah,
I think it might have been 35.
I think it got away from them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Reading right now. Okay. Always all these places you got to log in. So Reading right now is, I believe, are they 2-1? Or are they 1-2?
They're 1-2.
1-2.
They lost
okay.
week 1.
I knew they lost week 1, and I knew they beat
and
Muhlenberg.
They lost to Perk Valley.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so Reading opened the season August 23rd, hosting Phoenixville, and then lost to them 41-16. They then hosted Muhlenberg in the border battle trophy game there and beat the Mules 34-20. And then this past Friday, journeyed with us up to the Allentown area, surrounding area, to play Emmaus 6A squad, and they lost to Emmaus 38-7. So Reading returns home to host the Bulldogs at Shirk Stadium this Friday. This game is on Friday the 13th. Remember, like 9 months ago, we thought game would be on Thursday the 12th, but thankfully that's not happening. Wilson versus Reading will take place on Friday, September 13th, 7 o'clock at Shirk Stadium. That's the Albright Stadium. So I don't know what to think about Reading. They have a monstrous, mammoth offensive line. They have a plethora of skill kids. They just haven't been able to put it all together as a team week in, week out. Coach Troy took over in 2022. So this is his third season now. The Red Knights are 4-16 under Coach Troy. They did not win a game in the section last year. They were 0-6. They were only 1-9 overall. But they're led by the offensive tackle, Keyshawn Ifesi, who's got a ton of collegiate offers to date, and he is a huge, huge offensive lineman for them. He is a senior this year. He started last year. I believe a lot of this offensive line is back for year 3. I remember when Coach Troy started out, he was talking about his sophomore offensive linemen, and they're back now all as seniors, including Romello Fuentes, that we talked about, or we've heard, Justin, you and I have talked about, that they lost one of their skill kids. He went to Muhlenberg, no longer there, but they do return Alex Alvarado in the backfield. He's a strong running back, someone to keep an eye on, as well as Xavier Beatty, the wide receiver DB. He has a lot of talent out wide. They're dangerous in the return game. They have to get more consistent play from the quarterback position, which remains unsettled here for a second straight year. But both are back to lead the Red Knights this season. A lot of the team that played Wilson last year at Gursky is back for the Red Knights. So Wilson didn't have as tough a time last year with Reading as they did initially 2 years ago. Both ended up being pretty sizable Wilson victories. But it's one of those things, it comes down to focus. The team has to be focused and ready. You cannot think that you're just going to go out there and roll over someone just because you're playing better than people thought you might.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have to have the attitude that you need to prove it every week. That's how you're going to push yourself. That's how you're going to get better. And that's what Wilson needs to do this week. If you don't go out and handle your business, you never know what's going to happen. And like we said, we like the promise that Wilson has shown this year. We think that we have taken some good steps. We think that there's lots of potential. But you don't realize your potential by thinking you're good.
Right.
You have to go out and play well. So it's up to the team. It's up to the players to go out and handle their business. And we'll see how it goes.
It's been a mostly rushing attack for the Red Knights so far. Kaysen Fritz is the one that's been taking most of the snaps. Jason Plylaharn has taken a few, but the most of the passing attempts is go to Kaysen Fritz. Only 36 attempts in 3 games. He's got 231 yards, 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. Not a pass-heavy offense. It's definitely a run-heavy offense, and it does revolve around Fritz and Alexis Alvarado. They've combined for 89 rushing attempts, 473 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Gabe Laws also gets in the action. He has another 3 touchdowns in the running game. And their big receiver is Xavier Beatty, who we already talked about. He has 8 catches for 91 yards. Only the single passing touchdown so far. So if they're scoring, it's been on the ground. And Fritz, Alvarado, and Laws, those 3 guys are the ones to keep an eye on. It's going to be another week where the Wilson defensive line and linebackers need to stay active, and the secondary can't be caught sleeping. It could be a week like we saw against PW, where your Wilson's back into more of a traditional 4-4, and daring them to beat them with the passing game.
Right, yeah. We'll see. So you got to be ready to go. Got to execute. Like we said, there was lots of positives, but there was lots of room for growth from last week. Let's see us build and start to make that growth.
Absolutely. So congratulations again to Maddox Gruber, our Game 3 Player of the Week in the Wilson loss, 35-31 at Nazareth. Got a big one coming up as Wilson opens Section 1 play for the season, first section game for the Bulldogs against the Red Knights. And I think the last thing I want to say is just to remind everyone, we didn't do it at the beginning of the show, but make sure you like and follow and subscribe to a variety of Bulldog Hour and Wilson football sites, especially YouTube. That's obviously where you can catch this show and any other video we record, including player interviews, which none this week, obviously. But last week when we tried to play our player interviews, my 11-plus-year-old computer was having none of it and wouldn't allow it to play. It did thankfully mostly record the rest of the episode, and I did upload that in the past. So I apologize that the show was only like 30 minutes live last week. Justin and I did a full hour and uploaded the show later that night, but the live feed cut after a half an hour. I'm sorry for that. My computer just couldn't handle that awesome interview from our Plymouth Whitemarsh, the victory over PW when we talked to those players. Again, I uploaded that interview set with those four guys, so you can check that out on our YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to Wilson Bulldogs Football on YouTube and check out Bulldog Hour across social media as well, Facebook, Twitter X, and Instagram, and obviously Wilson Bulldogs Football on those sites as well. Posting stuff nearly daily during the football season for updates about previous games, pictures, next week's game, information on live streams. That's one that's very popular, and any information about tickets and gates and things like that. So make sure you're subscribing to all of the Wilson Football Bulldog Hour content across social media. And the big thing is pushing that YouTube subscribe to Wilson Bulldogs Football on there. All right, Justin, final thoughts.
Like we said, there was plenty to take away that was positive, but lots of room for improvement. But the key to good teams is that you keep improving. Just like we said after the win last week against Plymouth Whitemarsh, like, I hope that's not our best game. I hope we continue to get better. I was thrilled with that win and the way we won that game and the way we came together to win that game. I was really pleased with a lot of what happened at Nazareth. But again, I feel like I'd give us like a B for that game. And I know this team is capable of doing great things, but knowing it and being able to do it are two different things. I can't do it for them. The coaches can't do it for them. The family can't do it for them. They've got to go out and prove it on the field each week. And I'm excited for them to have that opportunity this week to go out and to continue to get better. Because again, even if they go out and do what they're supposed to do this week, I want them to get better each week. Not just no one wants to peak in September.
No.
So let's keep getting better and see where this takes us the next few months.
Yes, well said. I completely agree. Let's come out and play in as close to perfection as you can be this week. Right. Take care of business in all three phases. Don't make any big mistakes. Don't let them stick around. Right. We believe we're better than every team we line up against. Let's go out and show it from the start, from the coin toss. Win the coin toss, and then win the rest of the game.
Won the coin toss all three games. Yeah. I think.
Well, I hope that streak continues, because I know that the coaching staff has a game plan they want. And
I was jokingly going to say, what are the chances of that? But because it's something you could literally figure out.
Last reminder before it happens this coming Saturday, the alumni game to celebrate the 80th season of Wilson football is Saturday, September 14th. Gates are open about 5 o'clock. Festivities will really get underway on the field at 5:30. And, quote, kickoff. There is no kickoff, but that is when the game will start at 6 p.m. Should only take about an hour and a half or so, but it should be a lot of fun. We've got former players dating back to 1969 all the way through 2019 coming out to play, and a lot of the current coaching staff will be there to coach these teams. And, Coach Slemmer is coming in to coach his side. Coach Doms will be led by Team Doms will be led by Coach Doms as well as Coach Palm, Coach Wolber, and Coach Henney. So will be a lot of fun. Hope to see all of you there at Gursky Stadium. No Penn State game this Saturday. Yes, that was very deliberate on my part to make things easier for all involved, both people organizing, playing, and attending the game. Didn't want to have no-shows because of any collegiate games. So, all right. Next game for the Bulldogs is this coming Friday at Reading. Alumni game on Saturday, and we are back, Justin, for episode 9 of our 10th season in 1 week time. So I think that about does it. Thanks for tuning in. For Justin Raffauf and the Wilson football program, I'm Joe Mays, and remember, until next time, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.